Iraj Abedian is the chief economist from the Pan-African Investment and Research Services, and he now joins us via Skype. Iraj, good evening, and thank you so much for joining us on The Globe.
Good evening to you and to our viewers.
Now, Iraj, climate change protests on the eve of the G7 summit. Just talk to us about that, especially on the backdrop of the wildfires at the Amazon rainforest in Brazil.
Of course, this issue has been building up over the past few years. You've had some leaders like Macron of France and mostly Europeans supporting global action to contain global warming. And then you have United States and more recently UK, Boris Johnson taking a completely different view, fragmenting G7. So this year, G7 is fragmented across so many lines. Most important, of course, is the issue of global warming, but also international trade, but also global cooperation. And so Mr. Trump has managed to pretty much split G7 in many fragments.
Do you think that at this particular G7 summit and looking at the wildfires at the Amazon rainforest, and sitting at about 83% this year compared to the previous year, global leaders have expressed alarm, and there's reaction looking at Emmanuel Macron basically saying that, you know, our house is burning, and literally just quoting him that the lungs which produces 20% of our planet's oxygen, we need to do more. Do you think that this G7 summit will prompt world leaders, including US President Donald Trump, who is touted as being unpredictable with regards to the issues of climate change and the impact that it has on, for instance, now these wildfires in the Amazon?
I think one would hope so. There is clearly, if there is one issue that G7 and possibly G20 should apply their mind to and mobilize resources, including the resources of military like NATO, is what's happening at home. Of course, we have to see whether Mr. Trump will manage prevail the discussion, or Mr. Macron and the team be able to prevail and on the minority front manage to mobilize international aid to contain the fires. Clearly, the president of Brazil has made it clear that they do not have what it takes to contain the fires. So it needs international action, and in any event, it's a humanitarian national issue alone.
Now, Iraj, let's speak about, let's focus on the economies right now, which will be the main focus of the G7 summit with the world leaders there, you know, already being touted as unpredictable and not sure of what the expectation will be from President Donald Trump, who will be arriving there later on Friday. What do you think the impact of his presence there, just looking at what had happened in Canada last year?
I think, as we all know, Mr. Trump, President Trump has been, in one sense, predictable, and that is that he does not believe in multilateral trade. He does not believe in collaboration across nations. He's very nationalistic. And in that sense, one can expect that at G7, President Trump will take the position that he wants to have a good fight with China. He has opened up a new fight with France over trade barriers. And of course, very important, he wants to make it quite clear that America is going to support Britain as championed by Boris Johnson, who separated itself from Europe, because in Mr. Trump's mindset, the more Europeans are weakened, the more they are fragmented, the more America gets superiority and becomes the superpower in economic terms as well. I think that's his philosophy. And then my prediction is that he will stay on that page, will support Brexit, will not collaborate with with G7 in order to get the global economy collectively.
Now, looking at the motto for this year's G7 summit, which is fighting economic inequality, working for a fairer capitalism, the IMF has basically come out and warned that it may slash its world economic forecast by 0.5 percentage point if US-China trade dispute escalate. What do you think the impact of this warning from the IMF will be on the G7 summit?
I think G7 will be a split. The Europeans would very much support the IMF approach. They would want collaboration and they want synchronization of macroeconomic policies in order to ensure that more and more economies do not go into recession. Remember, Germany is on the verge of recession. Italy is in recession. Brexit will definitely lead to the UK experiencing recession. And America is itself not as strong as Mr. Trump suggests. So there is a global weakness in the economic system that requires policy coordination by G7 countries. And that is where the Europeans and President Trump diverge. Europeans want to collaborate and synchronize policies to avoid global recession. President Trump wants to do it alone.
The US-China trade tensions will seemingly dominate this particular G7 summit. Do you think that there will be some sort of resolution that comes forth between the global leaders with regards to this summit and the impact of the other leaders playing a part in ensuring that the issues between the United States and China are resolved?
I highly suspect not. Because as early as today, China upped the game by imposing around 67 billion tariffs on the American products, mostly vehicles. And I have absolutely no doubt that President Trump will retaliate. And he is not going to be persuaded by the Europeans who would want to have a united front with China. If America cannot have a friendly trade relationship France and Europe, how much less China? So I think it's a very, very unfortunate time that where the global economy requires G7 leaders to coordinate their activities to avoid economic recession. President Trump completely on a different page.
Now, last year, US President Trump refused to sign on the summit's communique after it pledged to fight protectionism. Should we expect the same, sort of stance from the United States, or do you think they will be more open this time around?
I think he will not be. Last year, at least, he was very friendly with President Macron of France. He had no open hostility with others, whereas since then, the situation has become a little bit more negative in the sense that he's no longer sees President Macron, who is the champion of the European Union and deepening of European structural closeness of Europe. He would want to make sure that does not prevail as the strong representative of the United Europe. I predict that he will not sign on any joint statement whatsoever.
Now, the U.S. economy seems to be performing well, but there are signs, or it's showing signs of cooling off, and the speculation that there might be a coming recession. Will this, will Donald Trump be rattled by any of this with regards to the speculation on the U.S. economy and the potential coming recession? Or is it just going to be him being his usual self and dominating the summit?
I think he has already opened an argument with the Chairman of the Federal Reserve of the United States, and his battle and whatever concern he has a re-election share, depending on the performance of the U.S. economy, he is not to settle it at the G7 summit. He's going to battle along with the Federal Reserve, hoping that will bully the Reserve Bank to avoid a recession. I don't think he's to bring that battle. G7, he will stay his own good self, create more fragmentation. In this G7, in my view, President Trump's primary objective show that Brexit is promoted and Boris Johnson is openly supported by against the rest of the Europe.
Iraj, very quickly, just in wrapping up, what are we hoping will be the outcomes of this G7 summit?
Well, we hope that they would deal with the fires in Brazil and they would also help the global economy. That's our hope. But unfortunately, based on the tactics of the President Trump, I personally suspect that it will not happen and we will be disappointed at this G7, possibly the weakest gathering of G7 in 50 years, ever since it was established.
Iraj, thank you so much for your time. We'll leave it there for now. That is Iraj Abedian, and he is the chief economist from the Pan-African Investment and Research Services.